This farm is using a special technique to transform desert sand into productive soil. It's growing 60 different crops, it doesn't use any chemicals or machines, and it's all the work of one man and his students. And to make this story even more incredible, that man has been in a wheelchair for the last 25 years.
This soil used to be the worst soil you could imagine, and over the years it's highly fertile. You don't need chemicals. I'm here to tell the world that you don't need chemicals to grow food.
This is the home farm and garden of John Graham. He is a specialist in desert farming who uses a special method to turn desert sand into highly fertile soil. And he is one of the pioneers of the organic food movement. If you've ever bought organic food in the US or Canada, or anywhere else for that matter, it's partly because of him.
Really, the cutting edge is working with nature, understanding the soil. People are accustomed to what they consider cheap food, but it's not cheap. I think it's just super important to learn how to grow food.
John Graham lives in the desert region of Baja California in Mexico. It receives between 4 to 6 inches of rain a year, and the temperatures can reach as high as 40 degrees Celsius in the summer. The climate is dry and mostly subtropical, with the southernmost parts being tropical. Although rainfall is low, the Pacific Ocean provides some humidity and moderates the temperature. In this episode, we had the rare privilege to meet one of the world's top desert farmers, who has years of experience transforming lifeless, sandy, arid desert land into extremely fertile farmland. And he does it all by applying several special techniques which are considered some of the most productive ways to grow food. That's also far more nutritious and tastes a lot better than conventional farming methods. And it all comes down to a few simple steps that include a modified gardening tool, organic alternatives to pest control, and how his soil is prepared, all of which we're going to learn about today. So John is taking us to his new farm to show us what they're growing there and to explain the special techniques they're using to turn the desert green.
I'm working with a new gardening project here. We have about 2.5 acres, about 1 hectare of land. We started about 3 months ago, and we're growing food for the local market. I'm working with a crew of 5 people, basically trying to fill up this piece of land right now with just all kinds of different vegetable crops. We have probably 60 different things planted right now, and we'll get up to probably 80 during the winter. We're trying to work without machines. We don't have any tractors or rototillers. It's all hand labor. We're not like anti-tractor or anti-machines. It's just a more productive way of managing a small farm. So these are the gardeners here. This is Rosie. Has a number of years of experience as a gardener. She's a world-class gardener. This is Tanya. Tanya has a stand at the farmer's market. She makes like a prepared food. And so we're growing all of the things that she'll use in her farmer's market stand here in the garden. Carmen has worked for me for over 20 years. And she's a key part of this garden. And then Alexis is a young fellow that's learning the art of gardening. We started a local organic farmers market here over 20 years ago. It's been going ever since. It's all about local production and talent, you know, what talents we have in the community of people that live here. We just basically opened up the place and it grew like people and vendors kind of grew together.
At John's house, there is food growing everywhere. It is the headquarters for his farming operations. There is a seed bank to collect and store seeds. There is a specially designed plant nursery, and it's where food is prepared for marketing deliveries. The entire property has been adapted with a system of pathways and ramps so that John can access everything in a wheelchair.
We produce all of the seedlings for the big garden here. We grow them in these flats, and that just gives us control. We can control, you know, how many plants are being planted out, opposed to direct seeding in the garden. You know, that can be kind of risky. So this just improves the odds. And we plant continuously, like every week we're planting new things. We use a drip irrigation, and it's really in this climate and the sandy soil, the dry climate, it's really ideal system. We use organic pesticides like pyrethrum, it's a chrysanthemum flower pesticide. Also neem, these trees here are neem, and the seeds that make a biological pesticide. And then soap, we'll use like agricultural soap. And those are the main three things that we use, but we're observant to any kind of diseases, or if we have a problem, we'll rogue the plants out and plant a new, healthier plant. So we're constantly monitoring the garden to try to take care of pest problems, as they occur before they get out of hand. That's really the key. Now, another thing we do in the garden is we don't have any kind of monocropping. It's all mixed up. The bed might be 50 meters long and have 20 different crops in it. So by having a constant change, there's not like one whole area that's susceptible to one pest. It's very diversified, and we kind of minimize the pest problems by doing that. We have about 80 different vegetables and herbs. There's not a huge risk in failing. When you have 80 different crops, if one of them doesn't work out, that's no big deal. Most people, especially people beginning in gardening, worry too much about insects, I think. At least half of the insects are beneficial. So it's a matter of encouraging the right mix of life in your garden. Like yellow flowers attract certain beneficial insects, or they draw insects that instead of attacking your garden crops, they focus on the yellow flowers. They're distracted. Or like basil, for example, is very aromatic, and crops like that can repel certain insects.
But there is also something else that makes John's farming so productive and able to change unfertile desert sand into highly productive soil. And it all comes down to a special technique he learnt on a trip to England from the methods of an inspirational organic gardening pioneer.
Alan Chadwick was an Englishman, a master gardener, who inspired many young gardeners back in the 60s. He's a very eccentric gardener, but he started the whole French intensive biodynamic gardening, a movement, you might say. And I was fortunate enough to, in England and at Emerson College, to study under his disciples. So I learned the deep bed gardening method, sometimes called double digging or trenching, and that's kind of in a nutshell, that's our style of gardening. The gardening beds are cultivated every 2 or 3 years. We dig them, and they're like, say, over 2 feet deep, cultivated. And then we never walk on them. There's never any compaction. The beds are permanent. They're in continuous production. So when one crop goes out, we put another one in. And we try to maintain something growing in the beds all year round. We use 2 tools. So we use a gardening spade and a gardening fork. And we dig and loosen the ground with those 2 tools up to 2 feet deep. And then on the very top layer, we make a very fine surface so we can plant into that. For cultivating the beds, we use a version of what's called a broad fork, which is a wide implement that has spikes in it with long handles, and you push it into the ground and pull it backwards, and it loosens up the soil without inverting it or turning it over. So what we've done is we've modified the broad fork by making machete blades, a series of 18-inch machete blades. Like I think we have 8 of them on the frame. And with our light and sandy soils, we're able to penetrate the soil and pull that back, so we just get more depth. Soil has its own universe of life, and there are different levels and what's called soil structure. And we don't want to disturb that. In modern agriculture, we do. We turn it over, but what we're doing is we're kind of killing back the life in the soil and then adding fertilizers or the nutrients a plant needs. And the whole idea of loosening the soil without inverting it is to maintain the soil structure, but introducing air, and where air goes, water can go. So it just opens up the drainage and the aeration of the soil, and it makes an environment that roots can penetrate into that soil. And one of the concepts of organic agriculture is the soil feeds the plant. We don't feed plants. We take care of the soil, and the soil takes care of the plant. That's the concept.
In order to raise the fertility of the sandy soil, John and the team are continually adding special ingredients to build up the life in the earth, which includes a recently discovered method used by ancient civilizations in the Amazon.
We use compost. Compost is just an all-around good thing for soil, especially here because we have very sandy soil with low organic matter, and so the compost raises the organic matter. Scientists used to think that the Amazon was unpopulated before the Europeans arrived. But that turns out not to be the case. It turns out that the Amazon basin was densely populated, and along the rivers and tributaries of the Amazon, they found very rich black dark soil. In Portuguese they call it terra preta. It turns out that this is man-made soil. It isn't a naturally occurring soil. Part of that was using charcoal in the soil. The charcoal, which they call biochar, the charcoal is the char part, but the bio is it's inoculated with beneficial organisms. And charcoal has an amazing amount of pore space. If you look at it under a microscope, it's just full of pores. And so the charcoal can absorb beneficial nutrients and keep them in the soil for long periods of time. The carbon doesn't break down beyond the charcoal. It's pretty much a permanent thing in the soil. It also absorbs several times its weight in water, and so it helps retain moisture in the soil. The only difference between charcoal and biochar is the bio. So we grind up the charcoal and add it to compost. In producing the biochar, end product of that, or a byproduct, is ash. So we also use the ash in the compost because it's basically minerals. It's just the minerals that are left over from the burning. But we also use it in the garden as an ant control. Ants don't like ashes. We found that you can sprinkle ashes around plants that are attacked by ants, but it has to be dry. Once it's wet, it doesn't function in that regard. This soil used to be the worst soil you could imagine, and over the years it's highly fertile. Well, I was in a traffic accident driving up to the States probably, 25 years ago, and the car rolled, and I was luckily the only person that was injured, but I broke my back. And so I've been in a wheelchair since then, and everyone thought I couldn't really survive in Mexico, and they just wanted me to stay up in the United States, but I couldn't stand that idea. So I came back and just started here at my house, just building ramps so I could get myself around and kind of see what's going on. And I just never tried to let it be, or let me put it this way, be as little a limitation as possible. I try to do everything I can for myself, without asking for help. I just don't try to think about it too much. I have to, every day, one time or another, but I try not to let it slow me down too much. I guess I'm anything, maybe an example to others that are, have disabilities. Try to do as much as you can for yourself. Well, people are accustomed to what they consider cheap food, but it's not cheap. If you consider the contamination of the groundwater, the air, all the resources, all the subsidies, just a whole mechanized market that is geared toward these production farms. There's huge costs involved in that are unaccounted for, particularly the environmental costs. You don't need chemicals. I'm here to tell the world that you don't need chemicals to grow food. I know for a fact that you don't. The cutting edge is working with nature, understanding the soil, the plants, what makes them tick. We need to learn a new way. And the new way is really not so new, but it's becoming aware of what we can do and what we can accomplish by really understanding nature in new ways.